Hey, I'm Jay Loren Norris, your host of Storypower TV, and I am so glad that you're here with us today. We are live in studio. We've got a guest here today that I think you're going to have a fascinating ride with. Hey, that was an accidental pun intended, but you'll understand more in a moment. You know, everything we do in life has a why behind it. There's usually something that causes us to start doing what we do. And when we look back on it, we think, you know, it's been fascinating that that one moment turned into everything that we see. And you're going to hear some more about that today, a journey that has changed hundreds, maybe thousands of lives over one moment in time. And that's what we're going to talk about in this episode of Storypower TV. Stay tuned. I'm Jay Loren Norris, host of Storypower TV. Thanks so much for being here. I am here today with a beautiful guest that I ran into in a small network meeting in this enormous hometown that we live in Granbury, Texas. A young lady that has been in rodeos and horseback and so many things for years and years and years, and has figured out how to make that not just a hobby, not just something that you do, not just a career even, but a way to change lives around the world. And so help me welcome Francie Stevenson. Thank you so much for being here today. Sir. I very much appreciate you taking time to visit with us. Yeah, so our primary questions on Storypower TV are really simple. Okay. I mean, we start with really simple anyway. And that is, who is Jesus to you and why do I care?
Jesus is the one that makes the world go round. He's the one that pushes you, nudges you, and as I like to call it, gives you God stories. You don't ever know what God stories are going to come or where they're going to come or what he's going to do to nudge you. And that's a powerful thing because he takes you out of your comfort zone in ways that you didn't know that was your comfort zone and teaches you to do things that you didn't know you could do.
So what kind of things have you learned to do in the last few years with the Stampede that maybe if somebody had brought it up to you beforehand, you would have went, no.
Yeah, well, So backstory about Hood County Stampede is when we moved to Granbury in 2016, my husband was a professional rodeo, he was a bareback rider. So we moved here starting a new business, he was on the slower end of rodeoing. He was older at the time, he was in his mid-30s, and that's a veteran in the bareback riding, that's considered old. And so we moved here, our daughter at the time was 4.5, playing with each other. We had another friend that moved here in Glen Rose, and their daughter was 3. We were all playing together, and about 4 days later, their daughter Sierra was diagnosed with a brain aneurysm. Wow. And she was stuck in the hospital at Children's, and when you don't rodeo, you don't make money. Right. But as a dad and as a mom, you want to be there with your kiddo. You don't know when they're going to wake up. At her diagnosis, they weren't sure she was. And so the rodeo family is a very tight family. Whenever, especially in the rough stock world, which is for those non-rodeo fans, is the bucking shoot end. So the horses and the bulls, that's the rough stock end. And we're a very tight-knit. And we travel together and we're at rodeos together. Our kids grow up together. We nurture and love on other kids that aren't our own kids. And so when we heard about that, our natural inclination was, oh, well, we'll put on an event or we'll go around and we'll ask businesses for funds to help make sure that they can pay their bills because their priority needs to be loving on their child and just being there for her. And again, we had just moved here. They had just moved to Glen Rose. People didn't know us. And
it's hard to ask for help from strangers.
Correct. And again, we moved here and only knew about a handful of people, but they were also people that had just moved to, it's kind of those things, like you don't know a lot of people. And so we just kept being told, no, you're not a 501c3, or we give to this national organization, or we give to this, or we give to that. And if you know my husband at all, being told no is not something that resonates well with him, especially when there's a child in need. And when there's a child in need, that's a job as a parent. That's how Jesus is to us. Jesus is our parent, and Jesus helps you through. Yeah, he doesn't necessarily gift you what you think you need. He gives you something better. Right. And so for us, we were able to get stuff to help them, but them being told no so many times, then my husband just said, okay, well, we're going to start a 501c3. Then nobody can tell me no.
Just wake up one day and do it.
Then nobody can tell me no again. And so it's like, okay, it was great. One of our friends was one of our bankers at the time, and so he helped us get the paperwork and, do all the legal matters and get all that set up. And then he's actually the one that looked at us and or my husband too, and said, okay, Wes, what event are you going to do now? Like, how are you going to start raising money? You don't just raise money when a child needs something. You have to have something.
Got to have some kind of ongoing feature at least.
Right. You have to have something in the bank, so if a child is sick, you can write a check then. And again, just because of what he had done for so long, and because rodeo is what we had known for so long, that for us it was like, okay, well, we'll put on a rodeo. And that's how it all started. And we were lucky enough that we met with Tammy Dooley at Visit Granbury, and she loved what we were doing and knew that it was going to support the community in a way that other events necessarily don't. When we founded Hood County Stampede, we knew our mission was to put on a family-friendly event in Hood County with the beneficiary being a children's organization or a child in need. And that's how it got started. So that's the whole story of how we got started and all of this. So since we are our own 501c3, each year we get to pick a different children's beneficiary, like a different children's organization or a child in need to be our beneficiary.
And who was it this year? I know you just completed. I wish we'd done this before your event so we could help promote it.
Well, actually, so this year's beneficiary is the Bo Bear Foundation.
Okay.
Which, if you're not familiar with the Bo Bear Foundation, they are another couple that, again, I'm telling you, rodeo's a small world. They moved here from California in 1819, from California, and started a bucking bull business. So we knew of them. Bo and Alicia is the name. We knew of them, but we didn't necessarily know them because, again, my husband rode bareback horses. I mean, so he had gone out to their place a couple times for different events, but it never really meshed. Well, then in 2020, they lost their youngest son, Bo. I believe he was 18 months old at the time, to a tragic drowning accident. And that was in February that they lost him, and then the world shut down.
Right.
And then they were fighting losing their fourth child, tragically, suddenly, and having to go through that in kind of a lonely time. You can't, COVID, you can't be with people. People aren't supposed to come to your house. People aren't supposed to love on you. You're just isolated.
Yeah.
And from then, theirs is another God story. Again, how we all mesh is Bo, the dad Bo Bear was the baby. The dad Bo was Alicia, his wife says he's a bath, like he likes to take baths. And so he works, she said he came out of the bath and he said, I think we need to start a nonprofit. And she said, you're crazy, which is kind of what I did to Wes when Wes was like, I think we need, again, the wife was like, you've lost your mind, but okay, I'm going to roll with you. And his reasoning was God told him that they need to start a nonprofit to help other families be the support system, because they were having a hard time finding a support system out there for families. Yes, there's suicide this, and there may be this, and there may be that, but there wasn't anything for tragic loss of just somebody coming to love on you and pray for you and just guide you and teach you about the Bible. And there may be people that lose a child and the Bible's not, they don't know about Jesus, they don't know about God. And that's where Bo said that's where we need to be.
Or if they do know about God, they think, how could you?
Correct.
How dare you?
Correct. Yeah. And so that's how theirs got started. And then also from that, Bo became a minister and is now one of the head ministers at Stonewater.
Oh, wow.
So it's kind of one of and so then again, when we selected our nonprofit, we opened up applications at September, October. And so last year, we had 3 or 4 different people that had nominated the Bo Bear Foundation. Again, we knew of them. We knew about their whole situation. We knew about the Bo Bear Foundation, but nobody had ever nominated them. Everybody had different nominations. And so then from then, the board selected them. And again, we learned, just learning about them and how our hands had come together before then, without us necessarily knowing that our hands had come before then. And where I'm going with this is then just meeting and loving on Bo and Alicia and learning more about their story and more about who they help and kind of what they've been doing and growing their nonprofit. And I always tell people, I said, nonprofits need to work together, because at the end of the day, we're all here to support each other. And the minute you start fighting with each other, we're not the ones that are losing the battle. It's the people.
And it's really sad. There are so many, whether you're talking about churches, ministries, 501c3s that are fighting drugs or fighting for sexual violence or whatever it is, they tend to have a scarcity mindset.
Correct.
And that mentality says there's only so many donors, there's only so much money. I listened to Charlie Kirk yesterday say that in the 12 years that they've been doing what they do, which is Turning Point USA, training people on civics, they're now up to 300,000 donors, but the average gift is $100.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, so we're not talking about somebody who's breaking the bank or, mortgaging their house or, giving away their retirement fund. We're talking about somebody who gives a couple $100, and it makes all the difference in the world
100%.
for what they're trying to accomplish. If the good that a nonprofit does is legitimate and valid and impactful, they shouldn't be scraping for dollars. They should be harvesting where everybody has leftovers. And I know it seems like the world doesn't have leftovers, but there's a whole lot more there than meets the eye, so to speak. And people they don't part with it when there's not a good cause.
Right. 100, and that's 100%. And that's one thing that we're learning. And I tell people all the time, I'm like, we're still the babies in the nonprofit world. We're only 7 years old. And in the nonprofit world, that's babies.
Right.
And Bo and Alicia, Bo Bear Foundation, they're only 4 years. And so I say, if we're babies, they're like infants.
Yeah.
And the thing that's been really fascinating this year, which again is why I think God put us together for them to be our beneficiary this year, is because we have been able to walk alongside them and help nourish them and support them. And
so you're mentoring them in the nonprofit world
absolutely.
Because your affinity was the rodeo world.
Absolutely. And I tell her point blank, I was like, look, people have helped us. Like I was lucky enough that maybe they weren't necessarily true nonprofits, but some of them were business owners, some of them were sponsors down the road. And they nourished us and supported us and loved on us and educated us as we were growing. And you have to make the mistakes, and you have to learn from your mistakes.
Right.
And I told her that, but I tell her point blank, if nobody did it for me, then I wouldn't be where we are today. And if I can do that for you and just educate you on maybe the minute 10% that I've learned over the 7 years, and you take 1% from it, then that's another option. Like, that's another way that we are fulfilling each other's goals. And at the end of the day, we didn't build like this. These weren't our ideas. We didn't say, oh, you know what, we're going to start a nonprofit today. This will
be a good way to make money.
Yeah, I was like,
this will be easy.
Yeah, I was like, never once.
Never said to anybody who has actually run a 501c3.
Exactly, and so it's kind of those things that they've enjoyed that aspect. We've enjoyed. Because we all have our own strengths that we feed off of each other.
Right.
And that's been super cool and loving to just
have the synergy.
Absolutely. Yeah. And like whenever you're in a room with them and the four of us get together, it's electric, and there's fire burning.
What is the objective of their 501c3? What is it that the Bo Bear Foundation strives to do? Who do they help and why?
So they get phone calls and applications of families needing either counseling service, or if it's local, food service, cleaning service, burial service.
That process of grieving.
Okay. And Alicia will tell you that those first couple weeks, people are loving on you. Yeah. And people are there.
It's the 6 weeks after.
It's not the first couple weeks. It's the 4 months and the 6 months and the 2 years. And it's the birthdays and it's the Christmases. And
we have a friend who buried his wife and his daughter 10 months apart.
So it's things like, so that's where they kind of step in, is they make the initial contact whenever they get a contact, but usually their follow-up is the aftermath of just, unless they get a specific request of, hey, where do I go for burial service, or where do I go for counseling service, or Mom and dad may know where to go for counseling service, but where does the 8-year-old brother or sister go for counseling service? Because they also have 3 older children. Like Bo and Alicia have 3 older children, and so they also experience the loss of brothers and sisters losing a sibling, as well as grandparents losing a grandchild and parents losing a child. So all those kind of steps.
It's a spider web of trauma.
It is
not a single incident.
It is. And going back to Hood County Stampede, and going back to what you just mentioned about donors, is whether it was because it was Bo Bear Foundation or it's because Hood County Stampede is starting to have legs and people are starting to appreciate what we do and who we serve and who we love on, we were able to make a $10,000 donation to the Bo Bear Foundation up front at the beginning of Hood County Stampede before we even got started. And that's something that we've never been able to do.
So that was what you already had set aside in the reserves?
Yes.
Like your banker told you to be able to do this?
We had money coming in January, from January to May.
Okay.
And from some of those, we just felt that based off the letters that would come in or the comments that would come in with the online, when people make online donations, there's the option, that we felt that portion needed to go straight to them. Like it needed to just kind of, before we even put on the event, because our sponsorships help put on the event, and then all of our net proceeds go to whatever our beneficiary is, whatever that is. And so, but with that, we were able to give Bo Bear Foundation $10,000 at the start of our rodeo. And then immediately when we walked out of the arena to get the show started, Bo looked at me and he said, "I know the exact 2 families these are going to." And I said, what do you mean? And he said, "We've gotten 2 calls this past week of drowning incidents." And he said, "I fly out Monday to go to California to support that family for that child because they're going to have to let him go to heaven. And the other one," he said, "and then I go from California to Utah." And I stopped and I looked at him and I said, "Are you going to see the Wright family?" And he said, "How do you know?" He said, "I am, but how do you know that?" And I said, again, rodeo. We're all tying back to rodeo. The Wright family, their 3-year-old son fell into the creek the Monday before our Stampede, so the Monday of Memorial Day. And they found him face down in the creek. Now, if you've ever been, and it's in Utah, if you've ever been to Utah, Utah is still cold up there, and the rivers still run pretty fast.
Yep.
They run pretty fast off those mountains. And so he was out there on his little tractor and got too close, and the river just took him away. And Mom and Dad were there, like Mom was there, but it was that fast. By the time she turned around, she was on the phone with 911 and the water. So it's just kind of, so we knew that because people had reached out to us, because backstory too, the Wright family, the gentleman whose son, his name is Spencer, but his brother Cody and Wes, we all rodeoed together. He was a bronc rider, saddle bronc rider, and we all traveled together. So like Cody's kids, he's got 4 boys and a daughter. We all went to, like we all rode, like when I say we travel, and we would all just be at rodeos together, and kids would all just be playing together. And so we knew the family.
Right.
And people, because again of the rodeo connection, people were reaching out to Wes and I like, "Hey, we know your beneficiaries, the Bo Bear Foundation. We know Bo and Alicia. Would you mind asking them to reach out to Spencer and Callie? Like, because they're going through this. He's on life support. They don't know, like reaching out to them." And so, in the meantime, people were reaching out to us to contact the Bo Bear Foundation. People were also reaching out to the Bo Bear Foundation separately about the rights. And so it was just, again, that whole connection that, and Bo and Alicia and I were talking behind the bucking chutes after that, and as we were talking about the rights and about the son's name is Levi, and he just looked, and I said, "This is just an awesome," I said, "I don't even know if awesome is the right word," and I said, "but just a powerful transition about how our worlds all collided." And he goes, "That's because it's God." He goes, "God had his hands in this years before this." He goes, he knew that we were going to move to Granbury, and he knew y'all were, he said he knew we were going to come together, and he knew that because of all of our connections, we were going to be there to support the family of Levi. We didn't know, I mean, none of us knew, Levi's only 3. We didn't know Levi, we didn't know that story.
Right.
And Levi just went to heaven. They had to make the tough call, and Levi went to heaven on Monday.
Wow.
And so there's, again, that whole story about how rodeo is just a tight family.
And you don't really think about, and especially if you're outside that world, right?
Right.
So you think of the car clubs.
Right.
Like we're doing this coming weekend, we're doing an event for the Lone Star Hot Rod Association. And we'll be doing StoryPower interviews at the car show.
Cool.
And collecting as many of those testimonies as we can. But that's a community. And when I asked Jim Owens, I said, why do you do this kind of car show? Why do you have a Sunday morning service? And he said, because I spent so many years with that one friend, and we talked about everything from old car parts to axles and turn signals. But I let him leave and never talked about Jesus. And he said, that changed my perspective on what I do. And completely shifted the entire car show scene for him. But I know whether it's the car shows or it's the lowriders or it's motorcycles. We've got a associate pastor at one of the churches we attend here locally that is part of a motorcycle club of all Christians. The rodeo world. I don't know, the Western Harvest Ministry, are you familiar with that?
I've heard of him. I'm not too familiar.
Scott Mendez, 1997 bull riding world champion. Scott's a good friend of mine. We've known each other for, 10 or 12 years. 2 years ago, he hired our production team, and we went to Oklahoma City for the Military Cowboy Rodeo Hall of Fame. And we filmed their entire thing in the awards banquet. And watching those guys who were, they're rodeoers from way back, but they were also Vietnam War veterans. And so one of those guys was a retired Lieutenant Colonel F-4 fighter pilot over Vietnam and also rode rodeo. And then after he got out of the military, he was in Hollywood. And what's his name? I think his name was Rex, was what everybody called him. But he's been the guy in every, when the cowboy jumps off the horse in Hollywood, you're like,
that guy.
That's the guy.
The guy.
And so just getting a chance to kind of hang out with them. And, I realized that little clique of people, they all knew each other, military, rodeo, that's a really small circle. But I didn't realize that rodeo in general was like the car cult kind of community and the car shows and the bikers and stuff like that. That's kind of fascinating to hear. Now, tell me a little bit about what the Stampede event is, what it looks like, how people get involved. Why would somebody want to sponsor it? Why would they want to attend?
Got it. So the Hood County Stampede is always the last Saturday in May, so Memorial Day weekend. We always know it's a busy weekend. But the whole reason we do it on that weekend is for our contestants. Because, backstory too, when my husband, I said he was a professional rodeo, if he's going to put his name on something that's rodeo related, it's going to be good. And it's going to be what I call the bee's knees. You know what I mean? Like he's going to make sure that the contestants are taken care of, the livestock is taken care of, and that anybody that shows up is going to have a phenomenal time. Like they're going to leave wanting more, and they're going to leave wanting to come back, because that's how we, in the rodeo world, that's how people treated us.
Right.
Granted, we were the contestant side and we were the family side, but people always gave us the grace and the love of, hey, we want you here. We want, whatever that looked like. So whenever he started, he talked to all the contestants and said, and he knew too, come middle of May to the 1st of June is kind of the down season for rodeo, because you have all your winter runs, San Antonio, Houston, Austin, some of them go up north. And then about mid-May, everybody kind of takes a little 2-week break. And then come the 1st of June, everybody goes up north because it's too hot down here. Because 1st of June, everybody goes up north because Texas is hot. So he knew that he had about a 2-week window to choose from, being the last 2 weeks in May.
Right.
And so, again, it just kind of solely came down to the rodeo schedule and what our contestants wanted. And every single one of them said, do that last weekend in May. Do that last weekend in May, because that kind of gives us a chance to, we have a break.
Catch our breath at least.
Yeah, we can at least kind of have a week and a half break. Come to y'all's event. It's just a one-header, so it's one night. We know we're not going to, come home and then go home and be home for a couple days before we hit the summer run. So that's the whole reason it's the last weekend in May. The other thing is it's a family-friendly event. If you're from this area, you know that there's a lot of things to do that maybe not so kid friendly. Like there's a lot of there's a lot of this and that, which is fantastic. As an adult, I love it too. But also as a mom of 2 kids, I also, and being in rodeo, and that's the other thing, in the rodeo world, your kids went everywhere with you. Like they just go. And if you have somewhere you have to be at night, there's another rodeo kid that, an older one that is there to help along. And, whatever that looks like. And so we knew we wanted it to be family friendly, and we knew we wanted it to be electric, and we knew we wanted it to also be cost effective, because in today's world, you can go to a football game in Arlington or a baseball game in Arlington or all those things. Well, you're going to drop several $100s to park and food and tickets and all the things. And so we knew that we wanted to keep our expenses low. And so an adult...
Not just for yourself, but for those attending.
100%. Like we knew we wanted that. Again, we want people to come out and have fun.
Not a $47 hot dog.
Exactly. And so that's how we thought about, okay, how can we do that effectively? Like how can we do it to where people can come, have a good time, and maybe only spend $100? Maybe, if they want. And then that's where we became creative with our sponsorship elements. Again, being in the rodeo world, talking to other sponsors and talking to other business owners and other nonprofits of seeing what worked and didn't work and having to tinker with it and play with it, because if you're not pivoting, your organization's your organization's not gonna grow.
Right.
And so that's what we always tell our sponsors too, is we do the best we can to give you the benefit of that. But to know that when you come and walk alongside us, your story walks alongside us, whatever that story is for your business.
So what kind of sponsors do you have? Are they clothing manufacturers? Are they trailer makers, saddle makers?
So we have all of them. We have, Boot Barn is a part of us. Hui, hat clothing company, they came alongside us. Wranglers come alongside us. Resistol's come alongside us. But then we also have...
Those are some big names.
Right. And again, that's the rodeo world. When we started this, we reached out to our friends who we had met, aka sponsors, and said, hey, this is what we want to do. We need help. We don't know we know how to put on the event, but we need funds to put on the event. And they said, absolutely. Like, we love what your story is. So let me walk alongside you. And then from that, we love, we've got the smaller ones around here, like F&B, First National Bank. They've been a great supporter of ours. Michelle Acero, Larry Wilkins, they've been a great supporters of ours from the beginning, because again, they know you're supporting the children, but you're also putting on an event kind of for children.
That benefits our local community.
That's our goal, is we keep everything here. Like at the end of the day, our goal is to keep funds here and support here.
So how many people attended your event?
Over 1,500 people.
1,500 in May.
Mm-hmm. In May, yeah. So May 25th, we had over 1,500.
So if you were just looking at local population, that's like 25% of the local town.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And the whole reason, honestly, why we have to cut it off is because we can't fit any more parking in our facility. Like that's all, we can fit people all day long. We can't fit cars in the facility. And so
where is your facility?
So it's not, we rent out Reunion Grounds.
Okay.
Is what it is. And so we rent
Time to get some buses.
and that's where we've talked to the city. The city's come alongside us too and said, look, let's work on this. Like on the fire marshal, he loves what we do, but he also has to be realistic about what we do. And so he's walked alongside us as well and said, okay, let's look at transportation issues. Like let's look at the trolley, let's look at buses, let's look at other parking options, because we don't want to cut the gates off because, just for parking, because at the end of the day, tickets is what goes back to something else. At the end of the day, our sponsorships help us cover the expense of actually putting on the event.
What does it cost to put on the event?
Our cost...
Because you got to rent the facility, bring in the livestock, bring in safety teams, bring in the people that are trained, the media teams, and all that kind of stuff.
Right, and then, and then the insurance that goes along with, that's the thing too.
That's never cheap.
People don't understand too. You have the legal side of things that people necessarily don't realize is the part of it. But it's easily over $40,000 to put on our event. And so, and you're talking about this year as well, we've had Overhaul Construction, that's right next door to y'all. They came on board. So we do have a mix of smaller local community as well as our national sponsors. And we do have some families that we had a family reach out to us that they had their family reunion here this year. They're from Pennsylvania. They're
wow.
and they come and they travel around, and a couple of them had been here, I think last year visiting, loved the town, came to our event, loved the event, talked all the family into coming down, and then they wound up being one of our sponsors. They didn't want advertising on it. They just loved what they did, and their family said, hey, we want to be one of your cooler sponsors, like just as our family.
So what does that mean, to be a cooler sponsor?
So they paid us to, at our event, how I said it's kind of electric, and we do crowd engagement. Something that we do at our event is it's the ball raffle. So you buy a bag of balls for $10. 10 balls for $40. Sorry, you buy a bag of balls, 10 balls for $40, and then
these like golf balls, or
no, they're the 3-inch foam balls.
Okay.
Is what it is. And throughout the rodeo, then we do it to where if you bought the balls, then we have 3 Yeti coolers that we put out in the arena, and so that cooler sponsor purchased the cooler for somebody to win. Is what it is. So it's covering the expense.
And you just draw the ball, or
so then they all threw it. They all threw the ball. So because we had different colored coolers, so you kind of threw to whichever one, whatever color you wanted to try and win. And then if your ball either went in it, obviously you won it, or if it was the closest, then the people that were the closest went down.
A foam ball.
It is very hard to throw a foam ball.
Nerf is bad, and it's coated with something.
Yeah. But it's fun. But it's fun because kids can do it, adults can do it, grandparents can do it. Any age can. It's not something where you're having to run around the arena.
Right.
It's an
not
easy
like
thing.
mutton busting.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. So and that's our thing too. Like we have sponsors that cover the mutton busting because you've got to rent the sheep, and we have Preferred that helps us cover. We have to rent the panels and the mini buckets. So it's again all those things that people don't realize. There's an expense that comes along with putting on a first-class professional event. It's
right.
not, so there's that aspect of things. And so just over the years, we've been really lucky to have different sponsors come alongside us. And
so what kind of relationship do you have with like the cowboy churches? I know there's 2 or 3 of those in the local area. One of them is really, really big, kind of has its own riding arena and the whole 9 yards.
So to be honest, we haven't even tapped into them yet. I'm going to be honest, because we've had other smaller churches, I guess, come alongside us and just kind of, not that we've never reached out, we just haven't tapped into them. They haven't tapped out to, it's kind of one of those things, I guess, we all kind of have our own churches that we're all members of, and they come alongside us, that they've kind of been loving on us, that we've never felt the need, that may sound terrible, but we've never, felt the need to go and ask people for sponsorships from churches, if that makes sense. You know what I mean?
I'm always fascinated. Like you said before, there's a place where even in the nonprofit world, there's competition and there's collaboration. I've served for about 8 years on a nonprofit board as one of the advisors, and they would feed somewhere around 500,000 homeless people over the Christmas holidays. And they would go to the local churches and say, we're bringing these people in. We've got suicide counselors. We've got evangelists. Nick Vujicic has been here to speak and lead people to Christ. And when 2,000 people give their life to Christ, that's like 20 average-sized churches. Mm-hmm. Where do they go?
Right.
And so we just want to partner with several dozen churches to be able to say, where can we send them to be discipled? Now that we've preached the gospel, it's time to disciple them. Where do they go for that?
Right.
And it was amazing, the friction, the pushback. Mm-hmm. Could you send some of your volunteers? They're like, no, we don't want our volunteers to go. Why not? Just send some altar ministry. No, we don't want to be there. Why not? Mm-hmm. And there was really no answer for it other than competition versus collaboration.
Yes.
And so I'm always curious how those relationships work. But we've only been in town a little over a year. We moved here in March of 23 and had conversations with half a dozen pastors, some of them that I've asked to be on the show. And they'll come here and sit down. They're like, well, don't record. Let's just talk today. And after about 30 minutes of talking, they're like, no, I don't want to be on the show. And I'm like, why is that? Yeah. And it's that competition versus collaboration 100%. Thing. And it's how will I be perceived? And I think to myself, there's a really poignant passage where he says, if you deny me before men, I'm going to deny you before my Father. And there will also be a whole lot of people line up and go, oh, but look what we did in your name. And he's like, I don't know who you are.
Right.
And so it's always fascinating to me just to listen to how those things play out in somebody's head.
And so I'm going to go back to, because 3 years ago now, we had Henson Metal was the first one, Henson Metal out of Crescent. They were the first one that became our buddy sponsor. And a buddy sponsor is they sponsor a group of kids to come to the rodeo, kids and their families to come to the rodeo that couldn't necessarily afford it.
So they basically pay for their admission. Okay.
And on top of that, then we have Chicken Express or Chick-fil-A that are willing to help us feed them while they're there.
Wow.
So when they come, they can truly come to the
They have the
event
whole experience.
and have the whole experience of being out in the community,
Right.
seeing a first-class event that is truly free for them, that they get to come. And of that, we've been able to partner with different churches or our beneficiary that year, depending on what it is, to gift a handful of kids or families to come to the event. Like this last, this one, Anchor Fellowship, their youth group came out, and some other families that people had made that connection again of, hey, we know that they want to come, but they can't, that just through those talks. And then the year before that, Rancho Brazos, they were able to have a group of kids come out. And it just kind of depends on, again, who our beneficiary is, because some years, one year our beneficiary was a Rainbow Room, well, they work with CPS. Well, CPS can't tell you, they can't gift the kids because of legal purposes. But it's things like that we've had different businesses come alongside us and say, you know what, let me sponsor those kids. Let me make sure that you get at least a group of 30, 40 kids or families or whatever it is to go and experience this for whatever reason. So when you're talking about churches and you're talking about partnerships and you're talking about local businesses and things like that, that's where I see...
It's a different kind of collaboration.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's where I see I always tell people, I love to come along people and walk alongside them and be their hands and feet. Like that's what I'm here for. If Hood County Stampede is to own if our sole purpose is just to get a group of kids to see something that they've never seen before and experience love for 2 hours, then we've done our job. At the end of the day, we've done our job. And if we were able to walk alongside them for those 2 hours and hear the national anthem and hear a prayer and watch some really cool bucking horses and have a free meal and just have a good time and just laugh and smile and forget about whatever's going on back home for 2 hours, then that's what Hood County Stampede is about. Like at the end of the day, then we've done our job. We've done our job. And that's kind of where Wes and I, and actually our whole board, feels that whole thing, is we just want people to come and forget about the world for 2 hours, maybe 3, whatever, and just come and be with your family or be with your friends and just come and forget about the world and just have fun.
So if you were guessing, how many people do you think have responded to an altar call at Hood County Stampede?
This past year, I know of at least 4 different, what I call God stories, of it's the first time they had heard somebody pray publicly.
Wow.
Because again, it's a rodeo.
And we think, because we grew up with that. I mean,
Correct.
in the schoolroom, and the national anthem being played at every football game, and the pledge every day in the classroom, and praying before class started was a regular thing. And then all of a sudden, it all vanished. And to think now that there are kids, elementary and even up to high school, I mean, it boggles my mind to think that kids today, their sophomore year in college, were not alive when 9/11 happened.
That blows my mind. Blows my mind.
Makes me feel old.
Well, yes. Yes, same. I'm like, I can tell you exactly where I was, exactly what I was doing. But yeah. I
had a coaching client for a while that she joined the Army as an intelligence officer because of 9/11, because she had a little sister who was 7. And she's like, I don't want my sister to go through what happened on 9/11. And so she joined. And when she was my coaching client, she was a retired major.
Wow.
And I'm like, I really feel old now. I mean, you joined on 9/11. I had already been out for 7 years, and now you're my client, and you've already served and retired. And it was that I really feel old with that.
But yeah, I mean, things like that, like national anthem, and then you pray in public. You pray in public, and that's just what you do.
And it's a new experience for many of them.
It is. And then we even have some of our contestants that when they get off, they kneel down in the arena and pray, you know what I mean? Like, pray to God, like, thank you for my safety.
That I'm still alive.
But again, they're like, I've never seen that before. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
Just to go from somebody that's competing and that high energy and that laser focus to then instantly their feet hit the ground and they're praying and they're thanking the Lord. You know what I mean? Like, thank the Lord on the back of the bucket chute. You probably didn't see it before because they were doing it in private. They had their ritual. They had their thing, but then to get laser focused and then their feet hit the ground and it's back to thanking the Lord again, and it's things like that I'm like.
And you don't realize how close they are to death in those 8 seconds.
Right. And that's, I do because my husband, because and because of my friends that have done that, but to see the faces of people and just walking around whenever I just kind of walk around and thank people for coming and thank you for being here. Hope you're having a good time. And just to kind of hear the chatter of, oh my gosh, I've never seen that, or this is so cool, or can you believe that they just did that, or what about, and it's all positive. It's all just a positive, uplifting experience. And at the end of the day, if that's not God's hands in it, then I don't know what is. Because
and it's so amazing too, because you see, especially with the ministry world, you see so many different variations of ministry. And there are silos, if you will, the car clubs and the motorcycle clubs and the rodeos and feeding the homeless and, world missions, et cetera, et cetera. But the idea that you can have an event like a car show or a rodeo that's not about, I got to get up and preach and, I better see everybody, turn. Like I heard a guy say one time, if it was just about turning over, my blinds have been saved 1,000 times because I just keep turning them over and over. Yeah. But the idea that they're genuine life change doesn't always look like an altar call. It doesn't always look like that. I gave my life to Jesus and I stopped all these things. Sometimes it looks like I found somebody to walk alongside me when I buried my son. I found somebody to stand up for me when I was made fun of. I found somebody who would stand beside me when mom and dad went off to work and I was just left here by myself. And like you said, the hands and feet. Jesus with skin on. And sometimes that role doesn't look like a religious leader. It looks like an everyday Joe or Jill.
Yeah, and I mean, and that's again, us being able to help a variety of children or children's organizations in a roundabout way, because also along with the children's organization is we also give scholarships to high school kids that aren't going to college, but they're going to a trade school and they don't have a mom and dad or they don't know how to do it, but they've come to our event and they've maybe come and hung banners, or they've maybe come and hung, helped at the ticketing office or whatever through their organization because they needed community service hours. Because that's another thing, we work with the schools, different organizations need different community service hours. But because of that, we're able to love on them and say, you know what, I'm proud of you. Yes, you maybe weren't a straight A student. Yes, maybe you're not going to college, but you're taking that next path of whatever that looks like for you, and we don't do it the first semester. We always wait and do it the second semester to just make sure that they get, unless there's a reason, but we love on them that first semester and then we gift them that second semester just to make sure that we're on the right path, and if that path that they thought isn't the right path, then we guide them to a different, okay, then let's look at different options. So you thought mechanicking is where you wanted to go. Now you've done it for a couple months and you're like, this is not my jam. Okay, great. Well, let's figure out.
Yeah, I like race cars. I don't like my fingernails dirty.
Exactly. Or whatever that is. It's like, okay, then let's go a different direction and maybe let's look into other options of what you might be good at. You learned you didn't like this. Well, let's learn what you do like. So different things like that. I will tell you too, so going back to Hood County Stampede, in 2020, obviously, the world shut down, and we could not have the Stampede because it was a public
gathering,
place.
and they're not 6 feet apart.
Right. So, but we had still made...
Be at least one cow between each
I mean, yeah, and it's like, you only put 400 people in here. But we had still made a commitment to our beneficiary that year. And they had reached out to us. At that time, it was the Hood County Children's Charity Closet. And they still clothe kids for school. And they still clothe the clothing closets at school. And so they reached out to Wes in August and said, hey, is there any way that you guys can put on something or fund something, because we still have obligations for kids? And my husband, being my husband, of course, said, absolutely we will. And so then he comes home and he's like, hey, so I kind of did it again. I kind of opened my mouth that we would do something. And we had been ruminating on the idea of starting a second event, whatever that looked like. And at the time, we were like, okay, we'll do a gala in the fall to help us raise additional funds. So in a matter of 24 hours, my husband, Wes, myself, and then one of our other board members at the time, Lisa Marie, we all said, okay, we've been talking about this idea for a couple years. How are we gonna make it work? Like, what realistically, what is this going to look like for us? And again, God put all the right people in the right places at the right time, because we knew we couldn't have it at a public place. We knew, so we reached out to another rodeo friend of ours and said, hey, would you be willing to have it at your arena, your covered arena? Sure, absolutely, whatever y'all need, cheers, have it. We knew that it had to be by invitation only, because if you're invited to something, then it's not public. But we also knew that we still need money in the bank. You know what I mean? Like, it was kind of all those things.
It's got to be profitable.
It still has to be profitable. And luckily, we had a caterer come alongside. Like, they were just getting their catering business started. I mean, again, everything just kind of fell in the catering company, the rental company, the place, everything. So we said, okay, we're going to do this. But if we have to do this, we have to sell this many tables in order to even just pay deposits, like just to even, hopefully people will come. And within 24 hours, we had the event sold out.
Wow.
And so we planned it August. It was the middle of August. It was actually the day before the first day of school that year. And it was 2020, I believe it was like August 16th. And we put our event off on October 2nd.
Are you doing one this year?
We are. So then from then, the gala has stuck. And so it's called Diamonds and Denim. And it's in October. It's October 5th. So we do the rodeo at the end of May, and we do the gala at the 1st of October. It is, again, because it's rodeo related, it is a little bit unique. We still have it at our friend's ranch. It is still on arena dirt, but it's still a cool element because we still buck horses during the event.
Wow.
Again, to keep it.
So is this like live band and dancing and dinner and all that kind of stuff?
Yes. So that year, the first year was the Bellamy Brothers that came for us.
Oh, wow.
And this year, the Great Divide is coming for us. And so it's kind of one of those things. Again, everything has fallen into place. And that year in 2020, we were able to give HCCC, I believe it was $15,000, $18,000.
Wow.
Still in a COVID year. You know, and again, this wasn't our idea. It wasn't our idea to help kids.
It's usually our ideas that are a bomb.
Right.
It's those God ideas, and you're like, that is so silly. Cross the Red Sea. Why would I do that? I don't know. I don't have a boat.
Yeah.
Noah's the last guy I knew with a boat, right? And then all of a sudden it just.
Well, and that, I mean, it was kind of.
Who would have thought of that?
Well, whenever we're talking about the gala, again, that's what I say. We had kind of been ruminating on it. We had kind of been thinking about it. But had it not been for COVID, looking back at it, had not been for COVID saying no to the Stampede, we would have never been pushed to have the gala, which we never would have been pushed to now have 2 events a year, to now raise more money for our organization.
Wait, isn't that what your banking guy said in the first place? Now that you got the 501c3, you just need some events to sponsor him. Okay.
Yeah. So again, it's all coming full circle of we're getting more people, and that's something we're learning too, is people that want to sponsor the Stampede and come to the Stampede may not want to come to the gala, and people that come to the gala may not want to come to the Stampede,
Right.
and that's okay, and that's totally okay. But now we've tapped into two different groups that are still loving on the same.
And some have two different types of entertainment style, and so that's one thing. But they may also still look at it and go, but I love the work that you do. The why that you do what you do is what drives me to come. And like you said, those sponsors are like, I don't need my name on it. I'm not looking for the exposure. I'm looking to do good. I just want to do good.
Yeah. So that's another thing. But yes, everything is all, everything is all online, hoodcountystampede.com. Facebook, Instagram, Hood County Stampede. We just we're keeping everything up to date. We have a newsletter that goes out once a month, every quarter. We have a blog that goes out once a month. We're trying to just continue to build that relationship with our, I don't want to call them clients, I guess you could say.
Constituents.
Yeah, there you go. To just let people know what we're doing and let people know that we don't just put on 2 events a year. We do, but we also do other things.
So is there a place online for people to apply for help if they go to the website?
So we do have our online applications. We just don't they're open, but as far as true open applications, we don't open it until September 1st for people to nominate. Or like if you have a group and you want to nominate yourself, great. We'd let you know. You don't have to nominate somebody else or you can nominate your organization as well. And I do tell people, don't be scared to nominate anything, because there have been some years that just because this may be the main beneficiary of the year, we still may love on you in different ways throughout that year, or 3 years down the road, or whatever that looks like. And
are these always organizations or families, or
no? They can be. So too, in September of last year, Man Brino reached out to us. Man Brino's elementary school reached out to us because they had lost their funding for backpack lunches, or weekend backpack lunches is what they call it, for the month of September. And a teacher had reached out to us and said, hey, is there any way that you guys can cover a weekend supplies? It's 50 backpacks for the weekend. And we said, well, send us the cost. Like, what does the cost look like? Well, we wound up doing it for a whole month. Because things like that, that's what we're here for, is for people that we, as Hood County Stampede, give ourselves the freedom to have that ability for the board to vote, make an instant, a call comes in, whether it needs to be an emergency board meeting or emergency conversation, and then we do a vote, and then the check is written. So it's one of those things, we leave money in reserve for those random things, those one-off things, those
disaster recovery. You
exactly,
never know.
Whatever. And that's the other thing too. A couple years ago, Lipan, when the fires started going out there, people reached out to us. Hey, is there any way you guys can provide meals or waters for the firefighters and drop it off? We were like, absolutely. Yeah. That's what we're here for. Yes, it may not be a child, but it's somebody in need. That those firefighters or those people are out there helping XYZ. So that's, again, yes, we hold 2 events to just bring recognition about who we are and who our beneficiary is. But at the end of the day, we're constantly moving, and we're we're constantly out there and loving on people and supporting people in ways that we can, any ways that we can, whatever that looks like.
In the last couple of minutes, what do you hope your kids take from observing this?
So 2 things that I have: a son that's 7 and a daughter that's 12. My son is in the arena at all times. That's just his thing. And then my daughter helps too. And the things that I've heard them say, that as a parent, you kind of just, them talking, is they're like, oh, hey, look, I got to help this family come here today. Whether they did it, but like in their mind, Hood County Stampede is theirs.
Right.
Like Hood County, and they see us talking to churches, and they see us talking to the cities, and they see us talking to people. And so one aspect is to be bold, that they see us being bold in our faith. Because every time we mention Hood County Stampede, we always say it's never our idea.
Right.
It's never been it may have been our idea, but it wasn't truly our idea.
It's really an assignment.
Right. That's a fantastic word. I'm going to start saying that. It's an assignment. But, you know, like they consider it theirs. And they consider it, you know, they want it to live on.
Right.
And they want to bring people to the event or to whatever that it, you know, and even my son came to me and said, hey, one of my friends at school is having a hard time, or he doesn't have a lot of lunches at school. Is there any way that I can start bringing snacks to him? You know, but like, and again, in his mind, he sees, I feel that he sees the Hood County Stampede. He sees the gifting of the organization to people whenever it's in need. You know,
one of my clients, we just finished a run together, but I don't mean a run, I mean, just finished a coaching cycle together. She just launched a podcast this week called Revival Moms.
Okay.
And on the Revival Moms podcast, she talks about other moms who have taken that ownership of the legacy of faith within their family to heart. Mm-hmm. And she talks about driving down the street through a pretty questionable part of town. And there was a guy out there asking for help. And her son, who was 3 or 4 at the time, said, can we do something for him? And so they gave him a little money and they prayed for him. And after it was done, the little boy goes, now I know why you like to pray for people. It feels really good. Then he started praying for his brother. Then he started speaking words over his little brothers too, and you know, repeat after me and positive affirmations. And then he comes home from school, and his teacher's like, "What happened to this kid?" You know, and so it's really amazing though. They say if mom goes to church, there's a high likelihood that the kids will, but if dad goes to church, it's almost guaranteed.
Right.
And yet, the biggest problem in society today are fatherless homes. Right. Where dad's just not there. So it's awesome to see that Wes is deeply involved in not just taking care of his own family, but expanding that beyond and teaching that by mentorship, by demonstration to your kids, and hopefully they'll grow up in that assignment and take it on as their own as well. Any last words you'd like to share with the audience before we go?
Just like I say, you've probably heard me say it a couple times at the events, but I always tell people, if you can just follow us on social media at Hood County Stampede, Facebook, Instagram, share our posts, let people know that we even exist, because at the end of the day, you don't know who we can help. You don't know of who your reach may need us one day and may need our support or may want to support us.
Right.
And that's my biggest thing is everybody can be a blessing. And if you just spread the word that we even exist and who we are, then that's all I can ask for.
Excellent. Francie, I appreciate you being here.
Thank you, sir.
I want to thank you all for watching StoryPower TV. If you just take a minute and go to Hood County Stampede, find it on any of your social media, find it directly on the website, and if you know somebody that's in need, fill out an application for them and let them know. But at a minimum, just hit the share button, send it out to other people and let them know. Like she said, you never know who would love to go to a rodeo, who's never been, never seen a kid try to ride a sheep. I tried that when I was a kid. It was not a good idea, and I didn't have a helmet on. I should have. There are so many ways that we reach people, and there's so many things that we can do to get outside of our own box, outside of our own comfort zone, to be obedient in the assignment that God's called us to. This is just one more opportunity for you to serve, for you to step up. And if you're in Hood County and you're bored and you'd like to volunteer, there are plenty of horses and cows to clean up after. There are plenty of tables to set and food baskets to deliver and sponge balls to pick up out of the arena, because the horses will try to eat them like apples. But if you can get involved, get involved. And if you're curious whether or not this is something you should be a part of, I'm going to say yes. Like she said, give it a try. If it's not for you, move on. But at least give it a try. I'm Loren Norris with StoryPower TV for Tell It Like It Is. Have a blessed day. And we're out.